Could Olinsky have saved Chief Reid in Chicago PD Season 12? Showrunner weighs in. Alvin Olinsky, Elias Koteas, was among the original set of officers that populated the intelligence unit in the Dick Wolf Police procedural drama, Chicago PD Old School, just like Sergeant Hank Voight. Jason Begg. The pair seemed to understand one another deeply, and together they knew just how much of the law to bend to obtain justice. Season 12 of the series saw Voight square up against the cunning Deputy Chief Reid, Sean Hatosi, who sought with all his might to bring down Voight and his team. Just like with several others who came before, he loses and Voight wins, doing so by sanctioning the shooting that claims his life. While there were failed attempts to dissuade Voight from making his plans, series showrunner Gwen Sagan believes that Voight's old pal, Olinsky, would have gotten through to him, preventing the death of the deputy chief. Killing a deputy chief of police, or better still, orchestrating his death is sure to have some consequences in the upcoming Chicago PD Season 13. The season-long war between Voight and Reid saw the sergeant gain an ally in ASA Nina Chapman, Sarah Buse, who ultimately confessed to having feelings for the often stoic officer. However, despite their clear connection, Chapman was unable to stop Voight from going nuclear on Reid, and Sagan, in an interview with TV Insider, gave her thoughts on her belief that Olinsky is probably the only character who could have talked Voight down from his decision. Sagan's comments read, "Up until his tragic death in the Season 5 finale, Olinsky was the one member of intelligence that was able to rationalize with his friend in a way other characters have been unable to on the show. Haley Upton, Tracy Spiridakos, was able to reach across and connect with Voight occasionally, but the master will always be Alvin." Given their history, Olinsky would likely be able to talk Voight down, as he had done so in earlier seasons. However, given the stakes of the situation, an intense IA investigation, intelligence getting disbanded, and Burgess, Marina Scorsietti, and Torres, Benjamin Levy Aguilar, being fired, Olinsky is more likely to back Voight and sanction Reid's death than he is to dissuade him. Reid will no longer be a factor when Chicago PD Season 13 returns this fall. However, the embers of his campaign against intelligence remain, with the internal affairs investigation still very much open. Looking ahead to the new season, showrunner Sagan, in a different conversation, teased that intelligence will likely operate differently. Tune in to NBC this fall for the new season of Chicago PD, and stay tuned to Collider for more updates. The streets of Chicago have always been ruthless, but the latest tragedy to strike intelligence has fans asking the impossible. Could Alvin Olinsky have saved Chief Patrick Reid? It's the kind of question that haunts longtime viewers of Chicago PD, not because of its plausibility, but because of what it represents. A hypothetical hope. A longing for the return of one of the show's most quietly heroic figures. Olinsky, played with grit and nuance by Elias Koteas, died back in Season 5, leaving behind a legacy of loyalty, sacrifice, and whispered wisdom in the shadows. But after Chief Reid's shocking death in Season 12, the fandom is wondering if things could have been different, if Olinsky had still been around. The what if that won't let go. Chief Reid, introduced as a hardened reformer with a sharp eye on Voight's team, had become a moral barometer in recent seasons. His sudden death, orchestrated in a warehouse ambush that was as cinematic as it was devastating, didn't just ripple through the department, it reignited a conversation about intelligence's past. Reid, who'd begun to trust Voight and even showed signs of supporting intelligence's unconventional methods, met his end in the very gray zone he once tried to avoid. And that's where Olinsky comes in. Alvin had this street savvy, said Chicago PD showrunner Gwen Sagan in a recent panel. He could see 3 moves ahead, and he wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. But he always had a moral code, even if he didn't wear it on his sleeve. Sigyn continued, "There's a part of me, the writer part, that wants to believe Olinsky would have sensed something off before Reid even walked into that building. A phantom in the shadows. In the imagined universe where Olinsky survived his prison stabbing, perhaps saved at the last second or quietly transferred to witness protection, fans are painting a vivid picture. Some say he'd still be in Voight's inner circle, riding silent shotgun through Chicago's worst nights. Others think he would have drifted into private work, but close enough to step tailing a suspect no one else noticed, reading between the lines of an intercepted text, catching the glint of a sniper's scope from across the train yard. Maybe he's the one who plants a warning call to Reid, or shows up with that old, loaded glare and mutters, 'Don't go in there.' Olinsky had a sixth sense, says Marina Scorsciati, who plays Kim Burgess. You couldn't lie to him. If he didn't like something, he'd let you know with just a look. If he'd been there, yeah, maybe things go differently." Voight's unspoken grief. Voight's reaction to Reid's death was telling. There was a familiar, haunted stillness in his eyes, the kind fans remember from the moment he sat outside Olinsky's hospital room, too late to say goodbye. He feels responsible. He always does, Jason Begg, who plays Voight, told fans during a Reddit AMA. But there's something about losing Reid that triggered that old wound. I think part of him is asking that same question. What would Al have done? The writers haven't made any overt connections between the deaths of Reid and Olinsky, but the parallels are undeniable. Both men died in the shadows of Voight's choices. Both deaths marked a turning point in the show's emotional arc. And both times, Voight was left staring into the abyss of what-ifs. A ghost in the script. Behind the scenes, Sigyn revealed that Olinsky still lives on in the Chicago PD writer's room. Metaphorically, at least. Every time we reach a crossroads with Voight or the team, someone brings up Olinsky, she said. Not just as a character, but as a compass. He was that rare mix of old-school detective and soulful soldier. That's hard to replace. According to insiders, early drafts of the season 12 finale even included a dream sequence where Voight sees Olinsky on a rooftop, warning him too late about the ambush that kills Reid. Ultimately, the scene was cut for pacing, but it shows how close the show still holds Olinsky's presence. It felt almost too poetic, Sigyn confessed. But who knows? That moment might find its way into a future flashback. The fans remember. For viewers, the idea of Olinsky returning, even in a dream or memory, is something of a holy grail. Social media has been ablaze with fan edits imagining him stepping out of the shadows, grizzled and tired, but ready to protect what's left of the team. Olinsky would have seen it coming. He would have saved Reid, saved Voight from himself again, wrote one fan on X, formerly Twitter. Another added, bring Al back in any way. Flashback, voice message, ghost vision. Anything. We need him. The legacy lives on. In many ways, the question of whether Olinsky could have saved Reid isn't about plot mechanics. It's about memory, grief, and the yearning for someone to make sense of the chaos. It's about a man who lived in the moral shadows, but somehow always found the right side to stand on. Olinsky was our moral bruiser, Sigyn concluded. Not clean, not pretty. But he had a code. And that kind of presence, you don't forget it, even in death. Could Olinsky have saved Chief Reid? We'll never know. But the fact that we're still asking says everything about the kind of character he was, and still is, in the hearts of Chicago PD fans everywhere.